Hello and welcome to this conversation that we are having with Kris Gopalakrishnan. He wears many hats, the Infosys co-founder, active investor. Importantly, he's also the chairman of the committee on coming up with the legislation for non-personal data in India in terms of a framework on how this is going to be used. Recently, he was also appointed to head a committee by the RBI on how to leverage technology when it comes to our financial services. Thank you very much for joining us on ET Now. Let me begin with the non-personal data framework. Now, the second draft was submitted last month. After the first draft was submitted, a lot of concerns were raised. Some people said this is nationalization of data. Some people, private companies were not too happy about how much they would have to share. What kind of concerns has the second draft addressed, sir? And my follow-up is the final one going to be submitted this month? There are some reports that say it will be submitted in January. So when is that likely to happen?
So we received about 1,500 comments and feedback on the first draft. We have reviewed the comments, and these fall into 3-4 buckets. The first bucket is where we needed to clarify the definitions, clarify the language, make the examples better and things like that. The second set are about addressing some of the concerns around copyright, around competition, etc. The third around how can we make the sharing fairer, better, and address the issue of making the data available for innovation, research, etc. But also making sure that it does not actually hurt a particular business entity, as you rightly said. So we have tried to address all these things. We also have added clarity on how the community can protect itself from harms when it comes to community data. See, non-personal data is about the community, and when it comes to personal data, ownership is clear. When it comes to non-personal data, it belongs to the community. So how can we ensure that community has a mechanism to prevent collective harms and things like that? So we have addressed all these issues, and I believe that this is a fair balance between the need to make data available for innovation, research, startups, unlock the economic benefit of data for the community, etc., versus the concerns that were raised about competitiveness and things like that. So we have definitely addressed these in our report. Now, the process for taking this forward is we have put this draft for public consultation. We will look at the feedback and the comments that we received. The last date is January 27th, and I really recommend all the people viewing this to, if they're interested, to look at the report and submit their concerns, comments, etc. And after that, we will review. If the comments, issues raised were addressed already, or maybe a little bit clarification is required, we will actually submit this report to the Department of MeitY, and they will then take it forward for the process that government has to follow to legislate this.
Right. And from a legal perspective, how is this going to be better than what is not covered by the IT Act already?
See, it is better because IT Act is about protecting the rights and the privacy, and especially when you look at the Personal Data Protection Bill, it extends that and brings clarity to the issues related to right to data portability, right to be forgotten, right for confirmation and access, the right for corrective action, erasure, and things like that. So it actually addresses the rights of individuals, entities, etc. Whereas the non-personal data is addressing the issue of data that has no personal information, individual information, no identifiable information, things like traffic on a road, weather, or looking at pollution levels in a city. These are the phenomenon that non-personal data covers. Now, anonymized personal data is also non-personal data. So it means, can we look at health records with no identifiable information within that data? Again, these are typically used for research purposes, used for maybe innovation and things like that. So our recommendation covers what are called non-personal data without any identifiable information.
If I look at, broadly, globally, how the internet is structured, there are 4 internets. The US internet, which is about business and technology, Europe, which places a lot of emphasis on individual protection, China, which is more of state interest, and India is geared more towards the development needs of the society. It is, at least, this is the impression that one gets. So how do you think this NPD framework will kind of enhance that development goalpost that the Indian internet seems to have?
See, first of all, internet is one. It's all interconnected, and you can access data which is in other geographies. What you're talking about is the regulations around access, regulations around use, regulations around data protection and things like that, which I believe that every country will think about, and every country will come up with its own rules and regulations. It will regulate the data that falls within the purview of that state, right? If you look at discussion on Regulation 230 in the US, right, which is now very hot. That's about regulating the companies within United States or that work in the purview of the United States government. So when it comes to India, we need to come up with our own regulations to look at how can we, on one side, protect our citizens. Second, how can we leverage this to create economic benefit, value for our citizens. So our set of regulations are towards the businesses that are collecting data in India, and how can we leverage this on one side for economic benefit. So for example, if you want to provide seamless transportation across multiple service providers within a city, London is already doing that. We need to have data collected across these service providers, aggregated if needed, right? So that we can have a single token, single coupon, single ticket that will take you from one service provider to another service provider. So you can take a taxi service, you can take public transportation, a bus or a train, etc. Now, if you want to seamlessly provide this service, you have to aggregate data across these service providers. Now, that's the benefit that citizens will derive by sharing data, and the set of regulations are geared towards enabling this. See, regulations, one, create certainty. It's a level playing field for all entities that are operating in that geography, operating in that country. And if it is uniform across, I think it's fair.
Right. Sir, the second draft also talks about how mixed data sets will be created, the changes required in the Personal Data Protection Bill. But I just want to understand what kind of changes will this entail. There are reports in the US that say if you assemble enough anonymized data sets, you can actually establish the identity of the individual. So how are you baking in these kind of risks?
So that is always a risk. See, as technology improves, as our capabilities improve to triangulate between multiple data sources, it is possible. And I think the report that you are mentioning says that if you take data across, I think 15 or so sources, 99% of time you will be able to pinpoint the individual, even though the data is anonymized. So this is a challenge. And so there, on one side, of course, we have to come up with technology which allows us to anonymize properly, standards for that, etc. We have made an attempt to do that in our report, and anonymization standards, etc. On the other side, we need to ensure that the individual is aware that when the data is being collected, they are giving permission for anonymization. Somebody may say, I don't want my data to be part of public data sets. So they can actually opt out for providing the data on an anonymized format. Second, we have said that data controllers, the people who collect these data, must have certain processes in place such that, or they must follow certain standards of securing this data and commit to not allowing for de-anonymization. They must commit to de-anonymization. That's the backup in some sense, because technology will allow you. So you need to commit to certain responsibilities as a fiduciary of this data, and we have actually provided for those in our recommendations.
So, recently you were also appointed as the head of RBI's new innovation hub, which aims to promote advancement in the financial sector using technology. What is the status of this committee? Have you all had a meeting to kind of set out the scope? What will the immediate focus areas be for you? Because 2020 has certainly been an inflection year, a tipping point of sorts when it comes to digital payments. I guess lending is going to be the next big thing. We are also talking about an OSEN network. So what will your goals be going forward, sir?
See, we have to leverage technology for benefit of society. Technology is the key driver for innovation. Even if you look at during COVID times, multiple facets of technology, from preventing spread of this disease to creating a vaccine. All of these are actually based on technology. So similarly, if you want to look at financial inclusion, if you want to look at affordable financial instruments for 1.3 billion people, technology is the solution. Reduce cost, provide access, etc. Technology is also the solution when you look at reducing transaction costs between businesses, between organizations, between entities, etc. Things like digital currency, etc. And I want to compliment the government and the Reserve Bank of India for being one of the leaders in the financial services sector, bringing innovation, etc. When you look at UPI, when you look at how seamlessly one can transfer money from one person to another person, one entity to another entity, just using a QR code or just using your phone. I think this is significant. Now, the RBI wants to continue in this direction, and hence they've set up the Innovation Hub. Now, the Innovation Hub will be the entity that will allow organizations to bring their innovation in a sandbox. They can test it. RBI will get visibility into the innovation. They will get an early feel for what regulatory changes are required if they want to bring this into the financial sector, etc. So it's a mechanism for the regulator, the government, and the industry to come together and experiment with new technologies in a safe and secure environment. The hub will also try and promote this and also work with other entities around the world which are also looking at financial technologies, fintech and things like that. We are in the process of identifying an operating team, especially a CEO. We have a call to recruit the CEO. Initial task is to set up the operating team, because what RBI set up is like a governing council or a board, and we are not the operating people. So we set direction, we help with the strategy, but the operating team will take this forward.
Right. This is also coming at a time where we are seeing, a huge surge when it comes to cryptocurrency adoption. JP Morgan last week had a 1,45,000 target for Bitcoin. It's, already gone past 40,000. People are talking about Ethereum reaching new levels. So do you also see the RBI sort of opening up to cryptocurrencies? Because India has had a very difficult history when it comes to dealing with cryptocurrencies. The RBI was averse to it, the government has been averse to it, and it took a Supreme Court ruling to finally allow people to even buy or trade in cryptocurrencies in India. So do you see that attitude as well shifting? Now they are talking about an innovation hub, their attitude towards a decentralized currency.
So what RBI will do in the future with these instruments, that RBI will decide. The Innovation Hub will not decide on these things. The Innovation Hub will only allow experimentation in a safe and secure way, in a sandbox, right? So whether it will be implemented, not implemented, in what format it will be implemented, there's also central bank digital currencies and things like that, right? So which of these will be taken forward by the Reserve Bank? The Reserve Bank will decide. Our role is to bring these innovations, to test these, to give RBI a visibility into what are the opportunities provided by these technologies, and what are the challenges provided by these technologies. Maybe regulations have to be changed, etc. And that's the role of the Innovation Hub. RBI will decide which of these will be taken forward, etc. We have very little role in that.
Final couple of questions, sir. In the last week, there's also been a huge furor on WhatsApp's policy update and the kind of data that it will share with its parent Facebook. Now, is this something that will be covered by the non-personal data framework or the personal data protection bill? How do you see it panning out? Because there's a lot of concern on the kind of access that WhatsApp will have, WhatsApp's parent will have. And on a lighter note, have you downloaded Signal as well?
I have downloaded Signal, but I have not used it. Just to play around with it, I've downloaded it. Now, the Personal Data Protection Bill has clearly established the rights of the individual. It has established the right to be forgotten. It has established the right for data portability, which is very important. So if you want to move from WhatsApp to something else, can you take your data along with you? And all of these things are established in the PDP bill. And I hope that PDP bill gets passed, becomes a law sooner than later. India requires. See, as our life becomes more and more digital, it is important for us to have a set of laws which will govern this. This is good for industry also, because there's clarity. Now, will we get it right the first time? Probably not. And we have to work towards actually coming up with a best or a appropriate set of regulations over time. I think that's what is important. One, have a set of regulations, and then if and when it is required to change, we have a mechanism to change that, where industry is also part of those discussions, etc. So that is how I will look at it. I don't think any country has figured this out, and in India, we want to be also in the forefront of this and create a set of rules and regulations which may go through a couple of iterations before we will get it right.
Right. Final question, sir, a related one. Larger questions on the power that big tech platforms seem to have. I mean, over the weekend, you saw Twitter deplatforming Trump. Now, while it may have had its reasons, it has raised larger questions on the disproportionate power that a Google Play Store, an Apple App Store, platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. seem to have. What do you think India can really do when it comes to regulating these intermediaries? Because, a lot of people feel they've even become more powerful than nation states. They can cut off conversations between the head of state and, the people in a second. So what kind of safeguards do we need to have? Because China has kind of created its own internet, so to speak. India has had a more open policy. Do we now need to perhaps look at India-based protocols, India-based apps? What can we do to address these concerns?
See, what is needed are institutions which will probably begin as national institutions. Government will have a role to set this up. Ideally, they should be independent of government. It will have to be like, authorities that the government sets up, etc., which is independent of the government, because government itself is also a collector and a user of data and provides services using this data, etc. And these institutions over time will harmonize across nation states, because that's finally required if you want to have a seamless flow of data and commerce across geographic boundaries. I would rather have regulations created by independent authorities, independent of both the state as well as businesses, right, to regulate these things. And the government must create these independent authorities which will actually manage these services. So that's how I see this ideally progressing, or should ideally progress. And if you don't want a business to decide, as you rightly said, how your communication will be regulated, right? And you don't want to completely give it to government also. So that's the reason why you need independent institutions which will manage these things.
On that note, sir, thank you very much for joining us on ET Now to share your perspective on a whole host of issues related to how technology and policy is architected in India. Thank you very much for joining us as always.
Thank you, Chandra, for having me. Thank you.